of SAFCEC, Mr. Webb Samfebe, to come forward and address us and make remarks. He will also do an introduction of our keynote speaker for today. Let's give the CEO a big round of applause as he comes forward.
Program Director, NAFB President, Aubrey Chalata, Honorable Minister in the Presidency, Mondli Gungubele, SAFCEC President, Refilwe Malela, and all council members, leaders of regulatory public entities, main sponsor Standard Bank, delegates and invited guests, members of the media. My theme of my speech today is towards ethical and conscious leadership in the construction industry. It was exactly 5 years ago, on the 17th of October 2017, at Misty Hill Conference Center during the South African Forum of Civil Engineering Contractors Gala Dinner event, when I delivered a speech known as JMC, Juniorization, Mediocritization, and Capture of State Institutions in South Africa, before the then Deputy President and current President of our country, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa, delivered his keynote address at that event. At that event, I received a standing ovation from both SAFCEC members and industry colleagues alike. I guess it was mainly because I spoke truth to power, but another possible reason is that some might have wrongly miscalculated by concluding that here is a good black man speaking truth to a bad black government. The latter is completely devoid of any truth, as all I had said was based on principle and constructive criticism of what I thought was wrong and needed to be attended to by government going forward. The then Deputy President, now current President, was magnanimous in his reply and accepted the painful truth and undertook that the government would continue to address those issues. He was never defensive nor attacked me for my freedom of speech, which is one of the most sacrosanct values of the Bill of Rights enshrined in our country's democratic constitution, of which I was part in its development as a then member of the first Democratic Parliament and Constitutional Assembly in 1994, until the Constitution was adopted and signed into law in 1996 by President Nelson Mandela. Today, Minister Gungubele, I'm going to direct the same conviction and vigor of free speech to my colleagues in the construction industry in terms of some of the things that are going wrong within the industry, whether or not I get the same standing ovation I received when I addressed serious and urgent issues to the then Deputy President of South Africa, Honorable Cyril Ramaphosa. Before I address some of those undesirable industry issues and possible urgent solutions thereto, let me reiterate who we are as SAFCEC and then reflect on some of the major challenges faced by the industry in general. SAFCEC was established in 1939 and is now a humanized, harmonized, and democratized industry body for the civil engineering contractors with a diverse leadership and membership in terms of JSE-listed, non-listed companies, and emerging contractors. We are responsible for the civil works of buildings we sleep, work, and manufacture in, the water that comes out of our taps, drink, and wash in, the roads we get to work on, the airports we travel from, the ports and railway systems we move our goods on, the power stations that illuminate the country's economy, and residential and non-residential buildings, inclusive of any other works of civil engineering nature. SAFCEC's roads and civil subsector represents about 70% of the critical mass of the construction sector in South Africa, out of a total of 4 main construction subsectors, with the remaining 3 subsectors of building construction, materials manufacturing, and built environment professionals, collectively representing 30%. We are the only founding employer party to the Bargaining Council for the Civil Engineering Industry, which is one of the most successful bargaining councils in the country with the most stable labor relations, notwithstanding some of the issues that are administrative in nature and are currently being attended to. The major challenges, Minister, facing the construction industry remain constant. They are lack of work, slow rollout of public infrastructure, tender cancellations, late and or non-payment for work done, impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, violent site disruptions, and load shedding, resulting in high input costs for construction commodities such as steel, cement, and diesel, which in turn would affect the cost of both public and private infrastructure. It is worth noting that inter alia, SAFCEC has been leading from the front in the constructive engagement with business forums that were at the time responsible for construction site disruptions, and we made it very clear that in their pursuit of their quest for inclusion in local projects, they need to do so within the parameters of the law, and we are pleased that such engagements have resulted in drastic reduction of incidents, with some ongoing incidents mainly driven by mushrooming business forums who want to close the gap that was left by those who have become legal and cooperative in ensuring that no construction site gets disrupted. We would like to see our government demonstrably taking urgent and results-oriented approach in working with us as social partners for the good of the industry, the country, and its citizens. This is because the construction industry is regarded by our government as the flywheel of the country's economic recovery. Yet, it is the only industry of the economy that has been for years declining quarter on quarter and year on year, with thousands of job losses and some company closures and some in business rescue, with many black-owned companies being the usual casualties. This explains, among other things, Minister, why our country's economy is not growing at the rate it is supposed to, because if the flywheel slows down or grinds to a halt, so is the country's economy. The late struggle stalwart Walter Sisulu, one of the founding fathers of our democracy, once observed, the biggest enemies of any organization are not from outside, but from within. Those who criticize and shoot down any proposed ideas on the table without offering alternative solutions. As a member of the Global Council of Conscious Leaders, I will be failing in my role not to raise pertinent issues that represent the voice of the voiceless, especially emerging contractors in the construction industry. Today, Honorable Minister, I am firmly proposing to the Presidency to help urgently facilitate 2 game-changing initiatives. One, the establishment of the Office of the Construction Industry Ombudsman. 2, public hearings on racism, gender discrimination, and bullyism in the construction industry. And I am confident that the Human Rights Commission and the Gender Commission can work collaboratively in this regard. The Human Rights Commission has recently conducted public hearings on racism in the advertising industry, and the construction industry must now face a similar probe, especially because the government is pumping in serious billions of rands in public infrastructure procurement with no visible black construction industry legitimate multi-billion market cap company to show. The Office of the Construction Industry Ombudsman is envisaged inter alia to play a cardinal role in order to regulate the unequal and sometimes abusive relationship between the main contractors and subcontractors on the one hand, and between the public sector entities and construction companies on the other. Oftentimes, black contractors do not find comfort in the services of both the National Treasury's Chief Procurement Officer and the Construction Industry Development Board CEO, and are mostly told to go and fight out disputes in court at an unaffordable cost, as they are regarded as mere contractual issues between parties. The public hearings on racism, gender, discrimination, and bullyism in the construction industry will help uncover the atrocities committed by some industry players, yet they still enjoy the comfort of fat contracts from a democratic state, which is something that constitutes an affront to the economic dignity of blacks in general and Africans in particular. Minister, there are horrendous stories suffered by women and black executives in the construction industry. Just to mention a few, there is a black woman whose private car was illegally installed with a tracking device by her employer just to check her whereabouts whenever she was sent on work errands, thereby violating her constitutional rights to privacy and dignity, and also compromising her safety. Another of many examples is that of a senior black executive who received much lesser performance bonuses than his most junior colleagues who happen to be white. And there are situations when black women have to be appointed. They are opposed on the basis that Mandela once said, "It does not matter whether the cat is black or white, for as long as it catches the mice." Surely, ladies and gentlemen, black cats are also entitled to equal opportunities of catching the mice, especially because they are well capable of doing so. The last of the few examples is an organization that has spent, Minister, close to 3 million rand over a 3-year period, trying in vain to replace the former white head of that organization. And the disagreement and resistance is about the appointment of a transformation candidate. The other matter that is currently dividing the industry between those who are for and against is the Employment Equity Amendment Bill, which has been weaponized by some to target those who are seen as supportive of the bill, even to an extent of holding secret meetings. I am glad that the Department of Employment and Labor is here today to give an update on the bill. Many black people in the construction industry, Minister, be they executives or subcontractors, cannot wait for the game-changing proposals to be facilitated and realized with the help of the presidency. For example, the black business in the built environment, NAFB, CISA, the Black Business Federation, among others, are supportive of the proposals that I am putting before you, Minister, for the presidency to consider. My last warning to all, both in the public and private sectors, is that the construction industry has already been identified by communities and community-based organizations as an easy and most visible site of struggle for economic inclusion of the marginalized. And if we don't act now to address jointly the burning issues of economic disenfranchisement of the majority of our citizens and facilitate their access to social justice. Social justice is predicated on 3 cardinal pillars of equal rights, equal opportunity, and equal treatment. Therefore, no amount, Minister, no amount of police and army deployments would be adequate in stopping violent protests in the world's most unequal society, where, according to the World Bank report of March 2022, more than 80% of the country's wealth is still owned by 10% of the population, and this is race-based inequality. And also, according to our own stats SA, which is under your jurisdiction, Minister, the unemployment rate is the highest among the youth and women in this country. There is a possibility of an Arab Spring associated with such inequality and poor treatment of the majority of blacks, which is something that all of us need to avoid at all costs. All these issues can be easily resolved through ethical and conscious leadership, both in the public and private sectors. Honorable Minister Gungubele, I wish to conclude by reiterating my urgent call for the establishment of the Office of the Construction Industry Ombudsman and the public hearings on racism, gender discrimination, and bullying in the construction industry. And I will avail myself, together with interested parties, for further engagement at the Presidency's earliest convenience, given the urgency and the gravity of the issues I have raised. The late former world-renowned statesman, former President Nelson Mandela, once said, "Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another." Clearly, Madiba's wisdom applies in the construction industry as well, and only ethical and conscious leaders across all sectors of society will realize such a great vision that will help engender social cohesion and a successful nation. There is also a need to keep and publicize a record of proven unethical and racist companies, so that clients, both in the public and private sectors, can make their own minds in risking their brands by doing business with such companies. In that way, we shall be moving towards ethical and conscious leadership in the construction industry. I thank you. Before I introduce the minister, for about a minute, I want to call upon the stage a young man, minister, to make a statement of commitment, who is the leader of the Black Business Federation. Some of their members have, in the past, been very problematic, I must say, in disrupting construction projects. And today, I want him to come forward. In a surprise, his name is Mr. Malusi Zondi. Where is Mr. Zondi? Really, that is, we've worked very hard to get, that is great leadership. Minister, to make this country work, we need to work together.
Leadership, Honorable Minister, Program Director, and the rest of the speakers, and everyone present, I greet you all. Yes, my name is Malusi Zondi. I'm the co-founder of Delangokbona Business Forum. And further, I'm the founder of Black Business Federation. I won't be long, Minister. We want to thank Webster and all colleagues, because they are the ones who came to us and spoke about something which they genuinely know. They never listened to media only, but they wanted to know what is the cause of all these site stoppages that have been happening around KwaZulu-Natal. Unfortunately, the media will want to determine our cause, but they came to us, Minister. I want to thank you, Webster, for that. Today, we changed our thinking and doings because we were engaged. Most of our brothers were fighting politics, and most of them were arrested. When they came back from exile after fighting, like you, Minister, I know you, you have cleaned Egruleni. But the opportunities were very scarce from where they came from. In townships where we come from, those who are technicians, those kids who are engineers, they were never employed. When we said we want to integrate young people, women, and those living with disability, we were never heard. It's only councillors that wanted to determine our cause. So that's where all of this started. Then people said, we shall fight for what is ours. And for what is ours is that there shall be no development that exclude a local person. But I must say in between, Dagarism took over. Now it's that Dagarism that we are correcting today. It's the very same Dagarism that we are saying we will never allow our struggle to be hijacked. We want to see strong economy, particularly in South Africa. Where this thing began in KwaZulu-Natal, we are correcting it. We cleaned our name because we are associated. Transformation is very good and wonderful. But we can never allow anybody to hijack our good enforcement in the name of radical economic transformation. It's where we changed our name and called ourselves Black Business Federation, because we said each one shall teach one. We wanted to see more businesses from grade 1 up to grade 9 empowering one another. That's what we are all for. Tela ngokubona is not about shutting down sites. It's the thugs that are using our name, and sadly we are the face of construction mafia. Currently, I must say, justice is not done. These big companies of ours just lie. They never recognize our government. They came to the areas with their own private investment. Because they say their investment is private, they choose not to engage the society. They just come in and then develop. Now they lied. They said they are going, News 24. They are out because these AK-47 are threatening them. It was a lie. They never told the truth. Already their projects are finished when you go to Bridge City as we speak. They are not saying that them and the Teguni municipalities had a conflict. Instead, they utilized our name to lie in South Africa and say they are threatened by AK-47. So I'm here standing to affirm our contribution. We are going to have a conference where we are going to mobilize every business forum. It's about time we regulate this meaning of business forum. No one shall call themselves business forum if they are thugs. No thugs shall rule this country. This country is for proper business initiatives. We are going to regulate because 2-3 members cannot be a business forum. Those who are just carrying guns to threaten the society, it's us that will deal with them decisively. So as we are standing here, we are affirming our contribution, Minister. We want to see true empowerment. We want to see our women participating meaningfully. We want to see our youth making sure that they are the future of this country with essential skills that we need as South Africa. Therefore, our contribution is solid. I thank you.
Thank you, President of Black Business Federation. And I think this closes the chapter of doomsdayers and doubting Thomases about the role SAFCEC is playing, not only for its members, but for the industry as a whole and for the economy. Now I take this opportunity to quickly introduce our esteemed keynote speaker, the Honorable Minister Mondli Gungubele. Mr. Mondli Gungubele was appointed Minister in the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa with effect from 5th August 2021. As Minister in the Presidency, Mr. Gungubele is the executive authority for the Department of Planning, Monitoring and Evaluation, Statistics South Africa, the Government Communication and Information Systems, which is known as GCIS, with its entities, and the Presidency of the Republic of South Africa. Minister Gungubele also serves as the chairperson of the National Planning Commission. In addition, on 17 January 2022, Mr. Gungubele was appointed Minister for State Security Agency following President Ramaphosa's announcement that state security would reside in the presidency. Previously, Mr. Gungubele was Deputy Minister of Finance from February 2018 till May 2019. After the commencement of the sixth term of Parliament in June 2019, Mr. Gungubele was the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Social Development and the convener of Social Transformation Cluster Committee. Mr. Gungubele has extensive experience in the public sector, having served in various roles from local, provincial, and national government. He is a political activist and a product of the trade union movement who became actively involved in worker struggles in 1973. In 1982, he became the member of the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM. It was during this time that he shaped his political and negotiation skills. In 1989, he was elected to the position of chairperson of the Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU local branch. In 1992, he took up the position of chairperson of the African National Congress in Vosloorus branch, and later became the founding chairperson of the ANC East Rand region. In the same year, he was elected to the Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC in Gauteng. Mr. Gungubele became member of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature after 1994 democratic breakthrough until 1997. In 1997, he took up the challenging and exciting task of MEC for Health in Gauteng Provincial Government, a position he held until 1999. Mr. Gungubele played a pivotal role in the transformation of the health sector in Gauteng. And there were no PPE scandals then, I must also. In 1999, he was deployed to lead Gauteng Sports and Recreation, Arts and Culture agenda. Mr. Gungubele worked tirelessly to unite all sporting codes and contributed immensely to the development of grassroots sports in Gauteng. He held the position of MEC until 2004. The same year, FIFA awarded the 2010 World Cup showpiece to South Africa. After the 2004 national and provincial election, Mr. Gungubele became chairperson of Economic Affairs Portfolio Committee in Gauteng Legislature. He served in his portfolio until 2007, where he was responsible for political oversight and ensuring ensuring the Department of Economic Affairs fulfills its mandate. In 2009, Mr. Gungubele was deployed to Parliament as an ANC Member of Parliament. He served as the whip of the Justice and Constitutional Development Portfolio Committee. He was then redeployed to the city of Ekurhuleni, wherein he served a full 5-year term as city's executive mayor. It is in Ekurhuleni where Mr. Gungubele impelled the city's governance and administrative record to clean audits and other cumulus awards on good government. In 2016, he was deployed back to Parliament and served on the Portfolio Committee on Communications and Public Enterprises, respectively. Mr. Gungubele was part of the collective which led SAFCEC inquiry and the ESCOM inquiry. Both processes paved the way for the turnaround of these state-owned enterprises. The Honorable Minister Gungubele holds a BCom degree in law and holds a national diploma in nursing. I'm coughing, Minister. With other various certificate courses. He also serves on the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress in December 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming to stage the Honorable Minister in the Presidency, the Honorable Mondli Gungubele. May we rise.
Hey, is this what, CIA? Wow, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Program Director, thank you, Changis. Thank you very much. I was blushing when you were reading that. And one asked himself, are we still on course on those issues? Program Director, Mr. Chalata, SAFCEC President, Mr. Refilwe, Malela, SAFCEC CEO, yourself, Changisa, Mr. Mfebe, fellow panelists, sponsors and members of SAFCEC, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I'm an unstable person by nature. I get moved by the situation as it unfolds. I thought I must do an unusual thing before I say anything. Just read you the aims and objectives of the ruling party, not in government, as the ruling party. I'll tell you why I'm reading this. It says to unite all the people of South Africa, Africans in particular, for the complete liberation of the country from all forms of discrimination and national oppression, to end apartheid in all its forms and transform South Africa as rapidly as possible into a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic country based on the principles of Freedom Charter. 2.3, to defend the democratic gains of the people and to advance towards a society in which the government is freely chosen by people according to principles of universal suffrage on a common voters' roll. To fight for social justice and to eliminate the vast inequalities created by apartheid and the system of national oppression. To build a South African nation with a common patriotism and loyalty in which the cultural, linguistics, and religious diversity of the people is recognized. To promote economic development for the benefit of all, to support and advance the cause of women's emancipation, to support and advance the cause of national liberation, development, world peace, disarmament, and environmental sustainable and development, and to support and promote the struggle for rights of children and the disabled. I go back to 2.2, to end apartheid in all its forms and transform South Africa as rapidly as possible into a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic country based on the principles of Freedom Charter and in pursuit of the national. I thought it is important to do that. Someone will ask, what is a strange thing? You're invited by construction industry, you read your party things. If you listen to the aims and objectives, Mr. President, Malela, there's nothing about an ANC conference in those aims. There's nothing about the branch of the ANC. There's nothing about the president of the ANC. There's nothing about General Council. There's nothing about 2021 conference. There's nothing about those. All those 9 points explain why this organization, it existed from 1 to 9 for the state of the people. In other words, whenever a party person speaks about something outside this, you must ask the question, when are you going to go back to the reason of your existence? because I had a lot of issues being said here, I'll read the speech as prepared. Maybe I'll speak until 1 o'clock outside the speech. Let me read the speech. Hey, there's so many things here. Also, go take the iPad. Thank you. We are very honored to address the third annual general meeting of the South African Forum of Civil Engineering Contractors, SAFCEC. The sector that you operate in as a professional body, which is infrastructure development, is critical to the inclusive growth and transformation trajectory of our country. The impact of this resulted in a series of interlinked occurrences. No, something went wrong. Thank you very much. As government, we are acutely aware that as an industry, you have been on a downward spiral for consecutive quarters and years due to the prevailing economic crisis, which was exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic, thereby shedding thousands of jobs and many company failures. The impact of this resulted in a series of interlinked occurrences, which are lower output, lower capacity to household finances, lower buying power, and high income deficit that have led to a state that collects lower revenue. On the industry, the gap between installed production capacity and capacity utilization is growing, in the long term expected to lead to shrinking production capacity, because it's difficult to keep an unused capacity. On the public finances, there is a growing need for fiscal support to aid the economy. At the same time, there are lower government revenues, leading to increased fiscal imbalances. Thereby, the credibility of government to deliver on infrastructure, security, and job has been compromised. We have, as government, asserted that given this environment we find ourselves in, government policy must respond to both the immediate effects of COVID-19 crisis and to address the country's long-standing economic stagnation. It is for this reason that the Cabinet in May 2020 has, amongst other, approved the establishment of Infrastructure South Africa, which you now know, a program within the Ministry of Public Works and Infrastructure, spearheaded by Infrastructure and Investment Office in the Presidency, to serve as a single point of entry for accelerated infrastructure investment, with a particular focus on both public and private sector catalytic social and economic infrastructure projects. ISA oversees the National Infrastructure Plan 2050, which offers a strategic vision and a plan for the country, promoting dynamism in infrastructure delivery, addressing institutional blockages and weaknesses, and develops a prioritized national portfolio of catalytic projects and programs designed to close the infrastructure investment gap. I beg your pardon. Phase 1 of the National Infrastructure Plan 2050, that focuses on foundational network infrastructure in energy, freight transport, water, and digital communication, was published for implementation on the 11th of 2022. Phase 2 focuses on the distributed and social infrastructure such as housing and human settlements, roads, municipal infrastructure, schools, clinics, and passenger transport will be published for implementation in March 2023. This will be going out for public consultation within the next month, and we look forward to your inputs from yourselves as professionals who operate in this sector. In tracking our progress since 2020, we are pleased to report that 34 of the 50 strategic projects, which is normally referred to as SIPs, are in implementation stages. That is 281 billion out of 340 billion within 2 years. The energy, human settlement, and transport sectors remain best performing sectors, with most of the projects either reaching financial closure or being in construction. This is not without problems, even here. Our next steps are to ensure that a budget facility is made available for infrastructure submissions made for projects that require fiscal support, and project preparation resources are provided for SIPs that require a technical support, and that the fast tracking of authorization, permits, and licenses required to implement these projects. All these efforts are implemented by government to ensure that we improve project delivery across the infrastructure development value chain and accelerate infrastructure investment by unlocking government processes in terms of permitting, licensing, authorization, and permissions. Ladies and gentlemen, you would recall that when the President of the Republic delivered in 2019 State of the National Address, President Ramaphosa, His Excellency, spoke of a dream of building a new cities that will enable us to break with the apartheid spatial development. During his 2021 and 2022 SONA addresses, President Ramaphosa gave progress reports on the development of the Lanzaria city, how can it happen today? Lanzaria Smart City. It reminds me of a certain guy. Yeah. To date, the master plan in progress is completed, enabling the City Council resolutions passed by the City of Joburg, Mogale City, with 30 million, while 30 million has been set aside by Gauteng provincial government for the project. Moving forward, we are targeting to create 421,000 direct jobs through investment into SIPs, while additional jobs can range up to 800,000 jobs. Key amongst the priority programs we have identified for the 2022-23 financial year is Phase 2 of Wolisizwe Rural Bridges programs, which aims to roll out 480 modular steel bridges over a 5-year period. Whilst we have highlighted some of the key interventions government has implemented, including future plans for infrastructure development, we must also reflect on the industry itself. We must address the need for transformation in the industry, which must not only lead to economic recovery through construction of good quality infrastructure, but also the need for inclusive participation of Black and women-owned construction companies as worthy beneficiaries of public infrastructure spend. Allegations of poor treatment of not only Black subcontractors, but also Black executives in the industry, and the resistance to employment equity in what bears the hallmarks of subtle racism is something to be condemned by all of us who believe in the preamble of our democratic constitution, which declares that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, united in our diversity. If allegations of racism and sexism persist in the industry, we may need to urgently call on the Human Rights Commission to conduct public hearings in that regard. We are also aware that industry has made call for establishment of the Office of Construction of Ombudsman. I've been advised urgently, Mr. CEO, that the feasibility on that one is at an advanced stage. It's with the Treasury as we speak. First report is expected to be submitted next year, not later than March. Meanwhile, Bongani is dealing with that. So it's not some dream story. Meanwhile, you must, however, reiterate government's intolerance of proven, including perceived corruption in the industry, and will continue blacklisting those who are found guilty of foul play. You must have heard the President's response plan to recommendations and findings of Zondo Commission. I had a lot of other people making their political comments, which our Constitution allows. The current list of blacklisted services providers by National Treasury stand at 143, and those found guilty of corruption will be brought to book. Corruption remains a crime against the people of the country. It is a betrayal of our democracy. And we must act together in isolating those who want to fill their pockets at the expense of this great nation of ours. We are therefore also making a call to yourselves as industry to come forward and blow the whistle on those who want to cut corners and undermine the systems government has put in place to ensure inclusive growth through infrastructure development. We are also aware that the industry is increasingly being targeted by what is referred to as construction mafia. And thank you, Zondi. Thank you very much for actually putting this thing in a proper perspective, both in theory and practice. We also appreciate that as SAFCEC, you've been leading from the front in the construction engagement with Business Forum that were responsible for construction site disruption, and made it very clear that in pursuit of their quest for inclusion in local projects, they need to do so within the parameters of the law. We are pleased that such engagement have resulted in drastic reduction of such disruptions. Just a few days ago, Program Director, President Ramaphosa addressed the nation on the government's response to Zondo commissions on state capture. In his address, the President reminded us that, open quote, when we do not have enough locomotives to carry goods to our ports, when our power stations fail, when our national airline close routes and cancel flights, when the employees of SOEs are not paid, and when our security services are slow to respond to public unrest, we feel the hand and effects of the capture. Your industry equally has been affected by this devilish phenomenon of capturing the state institutions, the lack of work, slow rollout of public infrastructure, tender cancellations, and or non-payment of work done, load shedding, and high costs of construction communities can all be linked to a state capture and a number of other issues, including inefficiencies that continue in some areas. It is for this reason that law enforcement agencies and government as a whole has initiated various processes to track those implicated in state capture. We want to assure you that the long term of the law is about to catch those. It has already caught some. And I want to go back to that paragraph that says, your industry equally has been affected by this devilish phenomenon of capturing the state institution, the lack of work, slow rollout of public infrastructure, tender cancellation, land or non-payment for work done, load shedding, and high costs of construction commodities can all be linked to the state. And I want to argue, and many other continuing strictures, whether it's in the capacity of the state, capacity of a number of other relevant institutions. I thought I want to say this, colleagues. The reason I decided to read the aims and objectives is that until all of us in this country accept that. Those who are racially, historically advantaged, in continuing to preserve that, you are entrenching and putting in place the ground to legitimize the opposite racism that seeks the correction of the iniquities of the past. You are legitimizing a lot of wrong people in the country. Because if millions of South Africans don't have access to food, don't have access to work, they have no water, they have no access to water, they have no access to sanitation. I agree with the CEO. There is no law that will correct their discomfort, their displeasure. There is no law that will make them quiet for not having access to sanitation, clean water, access to food. There is no law that will actually stop them from fighting for their dignity. Because unless we accept it, we are commonly bound to a common destination. I've said this several times here, that there is no mutual exclusivity between two things: correcting the iniquities of the past and pursuing a journey to an inclusive South Africa. Because if you think an inclusive South Africa can occur without correcting the iniquities of the past, you can't stay in your dreams. And even those who think that you can correct the iniquities of the past by excluding some of us into a future South Africa, the iniquities of the past will not be corrected. So these two, correcting the iniquities of the past and creating an inclusive future South Africa, they are two sides of the same coin, which is building the nation. You will not build a South Africa for Indians, for Coloureds, for Afrikaners, for Xhosas, for Zulu. It's not going to happen if the one of these sides of this coin are not in place. There are those who benefited by whatever ill manner. They want to be convinced that their children belong to the future of this country. That's not an unfair expectation. But they must also know that that which they hope for will not take place if we do not work in a manner that corrects the iniquities of the past. That the historically ill-developed black disadvantaged communities must see a change in their infrastructure, access to sport, access to economic centers, and so on. They must see a change, seeing the numbers of their children taking controls of big industries. Once that occurs, two things are happening. Those who are anxious about being part of the future, they are accepted because they continue to participate in correcting the iniquities of the past. Those who accept that we are all together in future understand that the two cannot be separated. I've got no doubt about that. I want to say it here that unless we come to terms with that, it's not going to happen. I usually use the Maslow in a very clumsy way. In my own language, and scholars here will forgive me, I will use it in a Ngcobo rural way of doing things where I was born. To me, I thought Maslow's hierarchy of needs is one of the major discoveries in the psychosocial human life. Because where it says ranking these needs, it calls it needs. I just decided to refer to them as facets of survival. That there's a lowest level of survival and the highest level of survival. The one when you need shelter, when you need food, and all those kind of things. But Maslow puts it at a point where he says self-actualization. I used a different language and he said, the highest level of survival, in my view, is when your survival finds expression in the survival of the others. When you're at a level where you realize that I've got my food, I've got my shelter, I feel safe, but now I've come to realize that I cannot guarantee the future without others around me. I call that the highest level of survival. Until all of us think like that, the nation building coil, which depend inseparably on correcting the iniquities of the past and ensuring all of us will look forward. In other words, the fear, the anger of the vanquished must be healed. The fear of the beneficiaries must be addressed. And you can only address that when you make sure that you don't separate these two. So it is at that point I support you, Mr. Mfem. Towards end, I want to say, as government, we have accepted. The president has actually given me a directive to actually go straight into infrastructure, which you say there's a slow rollout. I can say to you now, the president would have actually made an announcement in February of about the 133 billion infrastructure, which is supposed to be locked out, by investing 1.8 billion for bulk infrastructure. Just imagine, think about it again. If you only need 1.8 billion in order to unlock 133 billion, so that what you guys are crying about, work, comes to place, only because the systems of government do not allow that to happen. You must agree with me, that is very sick. We are getting close to that. When we deal with issues of aligning this brilliant ISA institution with the BFI in the Treasury, those are the issues that we are focused with. Because there's a lot of there's a number of structures in government that needs to align so that you unleash infrastructure development. I want to make it here. We all now agree it is not money necessarily that we are running short of. It is our ability to get organized, to make use of the money at our disposal. That is what we are busy weekly, and it's about 5 or 6 weeks, Mr. Ngema. We are actually in that now. We're beginning to see that until we sort those issues of institutional alignment. You have your BFI in the Treasury. They assess the authenticity of the project. You've got ISA. They assess the authenticity of the project. This project, and sometimes ISA, having assessed this project, must still go through the BFI. And already I've been advised I still have to check that ISA's capacity to assess project is rated by the top 20. Now, if you've got that capacity, we need to discuss why is it not a single entry. Those are internal government issues that I'm talking about. I'm trying to show you that we assist with the real Achilles heels that undermine the ability of infrastructure to flow in this country. And we hope, I pray, before December, we must have found a path, not the other year. We don't want the president to come again and announce a project next year, which we do not know how is it going to be implemented. And we are working on that. And I know the president gave us 10 days. We've passed 10 days because the challenge is even deeper and so on. I thought I need to say that we're dealing with those issues. Again, you spoke about, Mr. Febe, the slow rollout. This is what I'm trying to speak about now. And again, the tender cancellation. I think it must be the thing of the past because it creates unpredictability both for yourselves and broad investor community, whether at home and abroad. It cannot happen that we do not organize ourselves in a manner that assists you to plan your capacity in a dependable way in a short, medium, and long term. We are saying in my speech, one of the challenges we have because of the current situation, the installed infrastructure capacity is working under capacity, forcing you in a long term to reduce your capacity. When you reduce your capacity, it means lesser delivery to the infrastructure needs of the country. All those issues we are working hard to correct. We are going to be with you on the ombudsman. Now that is in the system. Take my word that we will be working with Minister Tilili to drive it. And the issue of gender discrimination, racism in the sector, again, we are making a commitment that we will attend to that. If indeed it makes logical sense to have hearings, we will have to do that. When you say infrastructure is a flywheel of the economy, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. It means as government, we've got a huge responsibility to play a key role in creating an environment that makes sure that you are planning short, medium, and long term. One other thing I want to say here on the affirmative action and transformation. If there's one thing we must protect, it goes back to addressing the inequities of the past, is that affirmative action should not be allowed to be betrayed by those who find the opportunity to get in there. This thing called affirmative action is dealing with the inequities of the past. And I must say to you, to associate it with underperformance is a high level of cynicism. But I must also say, those who are found on the wrong sides of its positive intention must also face the consequences. Because affirmative action is about the future of the country more than race. But it must address the racial situation for it to work. So the bigger picture is key. So all I'm saying, we are here, guys, with you. We're going to spend time with you. Mr. Ngema knows I am spending a lot of my time now in unlocking deliveries, especially in the infrastructure area. We will do everything in our hand. Mr. Mfebe knows I've worked with him in a number of government areas. We believe that it is important for the sake of our credibility and integrity that our words must find expression in our action. The biggest thing now is not the lack of money, it is implementation. We are in that space. Let's work together. All of us, let's correct our sins. Let's correct our defects, both the public and private sector. And without one another, it cannot be resolved. And again, I'm saying, the only way the nation-building coin can succeed is when both the past ailments are sorted and there is a believability about an inclusive South Africa going forward. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's give the minister another big round of applause. You know, I can't help. That's one reason I like attending these conferences. When I listen to some of our leaders, you sort of get comfortable that we are in good hands. you feel I must go home, do as much as possible in my space to support the great work that they are doing. Thank you very much, Minister. Those words are well received. Colleagues, I suggested to the CEO of SAFCEC that we proceed. The program says tea break, but I suggested that we take, with your permission, the speakers that remain and break once for lunch. But before we do so, before I call on the next speaker, I do really want to underscore. Now, I wanted to ensure that the CEO of SAFCEC has spoken. This is a SAFCEC AGM. I also wanted to ensure that the minister has spoken because protocol dictates as such.